with your fiancé, with his fiancé, who is not here, and the great Melissa Fleischut, who is head of the New York State Restaurants Association. She's CEO. And today we're here to talk about restaurants, but I just have one quick thing to say because we got some good news this morning, and that is that the Defense Department has approved Global Foundries Fab 8 site in Malta to make computer chips for the military. This is a pretty big deal, and in fact, when I met Secretary Austin, the new Secretary of Defense, I made a pitch to use Global Foundries for military stuff, and they're doing it. And this should be a real help. It could create lots of new jobs at Global Foundries. So we're very pleased with that. As you know, I'm trying to, we'll talk about that another time, not today. I'm trying to make New York the chip fab center, or one of the 2 or 3 chip fab centers of the country. And we're making progress there. So let me first thank Jamie for hosting us today at Toro Cantina, and Melissa for the great job she does under very difficult times with our restaurants. Now, first, almost all of our restaurants are small businesses. I have huge sympathy for small businesses because my dad struggled in a small business. Jamie, Melissa, I didn't tell you this. It's the opposite of a restaurant. He had a little exterminating business. You make things come alive. He killed things. But he struggled his whole life. So I know how business people struggle, and nobody has been struggling more than restaurants. Probably 2 industries that have struggled the most are our stages and our sound stages and our theaters. Palace Theater, as you know, I worked on Save Our Stages in the last bill. But our restaurants are struggling hugely. And so we know how important our restaurants are to the capital region and all of New York's economy. They employ a large percentage of the workforce. They have lots of suppliers, so it's jobs, but it's also the whole life. People want to come to the Toro Cantina to socialize and mix and mingle. It's part of the whole life of a community. So when restaurants are struggling and dying, a community struggles and dies. And so that's why I'm here, because it's so important to help our restaurants. And I'm here to say that we're going to move in this new bill, in the new COVID relief bill, restaurants to the front burner. And I'm announcing that I will push to get help for the restaurants, the Bipartisan Restaurants Act, in that bill. That will bring $25 billion to our restaurants across the country. And it's a very good program. I'll get into that in a minute, which will really help, because here in the capital region and in New York, we're at the center of the great American melting pot. We all have different kinds of restaurants, and they help us. They are the heartbeat of our main streets, and sadly, those local economies are on life support because the restaurants are struggling. Just here, we've had restaurants close that had really had people's hearts. Grandma's Pies in Colony, Cornell's in Schenectady, closed. We don't need more of these restaurants closing. And this restaurant, Toro Cantina, where Jamie's hosting us, they planned it for 2 years, and they got closed 8 hours after their grand opening because of COVID. So this is a particular example of the trouble we have. Now, we did get some help to restaurants in the last 2 bills, but they were part of the PPP program, the General Small Business Program. Now, that's helped thousands, tens of thousands of small businesses in the capital region and in upstate New York. But the PPP program wasn't enough, because the restaurants are struggling more than just about any other place, because they don't sell goods. It's not like a hardware store or something where you can wait online and walk in. People sit and mingle and are close to each other. So they've had particular trouble, and that's why we have to do more. So we have a $25 billion program in addition to the PPP program and the EIDL program, which I was able to put in the last bill, which helped save a lot of our restaurants. Now, let me give you some numbers. 54% of New York restaurants, 54%, more than half, say that they will not survive in the next 6 months without more federal relief. That would mean our economies would stay in a down mode for years, if we don't do something. Restaurant employment in the capital region has been down 50% in the pandemic. Pre-pandemic, The Glens Falls metro area had the nation's 15th highest density of restaurants. So that shows you how important it is. And some restaurants have about 80% of their revenues down. How do they survive? How do they pay the rent? How do they pay the insurance? How do they pay the mortgage? And restaurants want to keep their employees. A restaurant's an organic place. The chef or the under chef, the waiters, the people who help clean. It's a whole thing, and you want to keep your employees. And you have a bond with your employees. So you don't want to fire them. But if you don't have the money, what are you going to do? This bill will help solve those problems. Okay. We have already lost 3,833 restaurants in New York. That's a lot. Think about how many jobs that is if the average is 20 people per restaurant, which is small, right? It would be larger than that. So they're getting burnt. So we have two parts of the new legislation for COVID relief. The first part is called the budget part, which we passed. And that just sets the overall numbers. The First Amendment, as Majority Leader, I'm now allowed to put amendment. I'm the one who decides what amendments and what bills go on the floor. I'm going to use that clout to help New York and help the capital region. The first amendment I put on the floor was a bipartisan restaurant called the Restaurants Act, the $25 billion. It was sponsored by a Democrat, Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, and a Republican, Roger Wicker of Mississippi. And so it's bipartisan. Now we have to work on the rest of the bill. Now that we've done the budget, we go to what's called reconciliation, where we fill in the blanks. And I'll be relying on Melissa and Jamie and many restaurateurs in New York to know what exactly they need in the bill now that we have the $25 billion. But here is how we've planned it. Maximum grants would be for $5 million per individual restaurant. The money would go till December 31st of this year, and by then, we hope COVID will be pretty much past us. By then, most New Yorkers should have had the vaccines, and the restaurants can be fine on their own. If not, we'll renew it. And if we run out of money sooner, we'll renew it. And this won't be that hard to renew because it's bipartisan. It's one of the few things in this bill that is bipartisan. I wish there were more. It's $10 million per restaurant group. In other words, we don't want Olive Garden or Red Lobster to suck up all the money, that have thousands of restaurants. They can afford it. So the groups are limited in what they can get. And you can only have 20 restaurants in your group, 20 locations, and only $10 million per group, $5 million if it's an individual restaurant. Okay? And then we reserve $5 billion of the $25 billion for small mom and pop restaurants, because they'll have trouble applying, and if only the bigger ones applied, they'd be squeezed out. So that money goes to them. So in a nutshell, this is a Save Our Restaurants bill, and it will save them. We've worked closely with the restaurant community, and it's very, very important. It's one of the things I'm pushing the hardest. It's one of my top priorities, along with state and local aid, in the new bill that's coming up. And we hope it'll be passed and on the President's desk by mid-March, not only the Restaurants Act, but the General Relief Bill. And then Jamie and the thousands of restaurants in Melissa's organization, as well as all restaurants in New York, can get help. Okay? Now we're going to take questions on this subject. This subject, folks.
Is this a loan?
No, it's a grant. The restaurants can get loans that are forgivable from the PPP program, but that didn't work, and they've got debt already. It's a good question.
They're starting to have to pay back those PPP right now.
Exactly. So this is a grant, not a loan, and it can go for up to 6 months, and as I said, up to $5 million a restaurant. Should cover most all the restaurants in the capital region. Any other questions on this subject?
Are there any clawback provisions?
I can't hear you, sir.
Clawback provisions? In other words, you have to do something specific to get the...
Oh, good. I'm glad you asked that. On the PPP program, it was very specific that the first round you had 75% had to go to the employees, then we lowered that to 60. This can be used for employees, but it can be used for many other things. So it fits in nicely to the PPP, and it's much more flexible, and there isn't a clawback, no.
More. For Jamie, how would this help you?
Oh, I'm sorry. Jamie's supposed to speak and Melissa's supposed to speak. Jamie, may I ask you a question? Sure. How would this help you?
Thank you, Senator. Well, this bill, in particular here at Toro Cantina, would be helpful because we're amongst a good amount of restaurants that opened outside of the timeline that would have qualified them for PPP loans. So this restaurant in particular does not have a history of employment that went back in 2019, so therefore did not qualify for PPP loans. And I know of several other restaurants that are in the same situation. So this would be a great welcome relief for restaurants in that situation. I find that this is an overwhelmingly great thing for the industry. All of us that are really passionate about this business have been heartbroken by what it's done to the scene of the thing that we've dedicated our lives to. It's changed it in so many ways, and we're struggling and keeping hope that it's going to be back to what it was at some point, someday, so that we can be back in the world that we love to be in, taking care of people, making experiences for people. And as we go forward, I look at it and I find that we're very fortunate. We've had a lot of support from the community, but there's other counterparts to myself in this business that maybe haven't had so much luck throughout these times, and I really feel for them. There's been restaurants, like the Senator said, that have closed, that won't make it over the next 3 months, and my heart goes out to everybody who's struggling, and we've had our own struggles ourselves. Our management team and our group has been challenged, to say the least, throughout these times. There's been some really ups and downs, some really hard times.
How many people work here, James?
Here, right now, I believe we have 74 employees altogether.
Look how important these places are. 74 employees.
Yeah, and you know, it's been a tough time for the employees as well. They're working in a different environment that they're not used to. Everything's changed about how we do business and about how they approach their jobs. So I look forward to better days. I look forward to days where things return to what they used to be. I'm sorry?
Would you like more guidance? Would you like to be open more?
Would I like to be open more? Yeah, I mean, we are open. You mean as far as the business?
She means capacity.
Oh, capacity?
Percentage of
yeah,
people,
yeah. Percentage-wise, it would be great to be able to accommodate more people. At the same time, because of the employment and the way things are nowadays, we're just happy to be able to get everybody that we do get in currently. So, and you know, when patio season opens, we have a big patio. We have a lot of room here. We're fortunate in that sense that we have a lot of space here. We can space everybody apart. But I look forward to being able to pack the house and have crazy, great Saturday and Friday nights like we used to.
Great. Melissa? Sorry.
No.
By the way, I see a Valentine's Day steer over there. Is that right?
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to thank Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer for all his support of the restaurant industry. He has been a great partner for us at the federal level through the entire pandemic. As soon as this happened, we started having conversations about a dedicated restaurant relief fund and what that would look like and what we needed. The first go-around with the CARES Act and the PPP program worked, you know, for some restaurants, not for all. And when we had problems and we needed fixes, we went to the Senator's office and his team, and they helped us fix that legislation at the federal level. That survey he mentioned, that 54% survey, came from us. Those were our members saying that, you know, going into the fall when numbers started to rise again and things started to look bad, that the restaurants were really concerned about how they were going to get through this. And then we got a second relief package, and now a dedicated restaurant relief fund is on the way. So there is good news on the horizon for the industry, but even though we're open at 50% and some of the regulations are starting to ease up, we are still, you know, not where we need to be. Employment in the industry is still down about a third, December 2020 compared to December 2019, and December is one of the biggest months in the restaurant industry. And it's even worse, obviously, down in New York City. So this grant money is going to make a big difference to these restaurants as they start to see restrictions ease, start to get the vaccine for their employees, and we start to reopen.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Any more questions on this subject? No? Okay. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to get on my way. Have a nice day. No, I'm just, thank you.